Good morning. This is Lou Cerny with Sedlac, and we'd like to welcome you to the second in our series of events discussing balancing people, systems, and automation. These are topics, obviously, that are facing all of us these days as we try to determine what's the best ways to optimize our operations. And today we're pleased to have Radwell International and Swisslog joining us as part of the panel. You know, there's many options out there. Certainly goods to person is a significant portion of what we're seeing in terms of automation technologies these days. And as a leading implementer of the auto store systems, we're pleased to have Swisslog as part of this panel. You know, we certainly appreciate the insight that we'll learn today from them and thank them for participating. As I mentioned, this is the second in a series of events. The first one concentrated primarily on the systems portion of the equation. And if you registered after that session was presented, or if you registered and could not attend the first session, we welcome you to go back. You're able to view the session. All these sessions are recorded. If someone needs to leave early, likewise, you know, you'll be able to come back and view the sessions as well. So we appreciate that. You know, we'll learn more about Radwell and what they do, and you know, why they're continuing to implement additional systems from Swisslog as we go through the session. For you who responded to the questions that we asked, you know, it's always good to understand, you know, what's really driving operations these days, and not surprising. We've updated these from the last session, and the responses to the questions and the order of these responses really has not changed. It's still robotics and automation at the top spot there. And that kind of ties in also with upgrading material handling systems, and then the information systems themselves, along with optimizing facility design and flow. And then, you know, as we go down further, network analysis, where you're trying to figure out how many facilities, where they should be, et cetera. And then labor management systems is in the bottom spot of the responses to the questions. So if that's over the past year, if we look at the next slide, you know, it's really basically a similar ranking as what we saw on the first, with automation still in the lead spot there. And you know, we'll talk a little bit at the end of the session about labor management, because the third session is a combination of discussions on you know, additional automation options with BrightPick, as well as labor management systems that will be presented from TZA. So with those introductory comments, I'd like to turn this over to Dave Sedlac, or Dave Sedlac, he wishes, Dave Teeple from Sedlac, who is a director with our firm, and he'll take us through the session here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lou. Appreciate that. So joining us today, we have two industry veterans that will kind of share a little bit about themselves and a great case history. I know everybody's interested, as Lou mentioned, in goods to person in particular. So you won't be disappointed. So getting right to it, I want to introduce for our session. First is from Swisslog, we have Paul Gottschlich, who's a sales director and a 40-year veteran of the industry. He's been instrumental in shaping supply chain automation strategies for trusted global players, and played a key role in the first ever auto store installation in North America. Joining Paul from Radwell will be Brian Janis, who's the global director of procurement at Radwell. He's responsible for purchasing inventory, relationships, data, catalog management for Radwell globally. Prior to his role, he had handled facility design, project management, and automation systems implementation. Brian holds a bachelor's degree from Virginia Tech in mechanical engineering. Paul, you want to kick things off for us?
Will do. The first thing we'll do is have Radwell go through and explain who they are, and then we'll follow up with Swisslog explaining who is Swisslog. So I'll turn it over to Radwell. Brian, if you could go through and describe Radwell.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I'm Brian Janis. I'm the Global Procurement Director here at Radwell. Just to start off, who is Radwell? So Radwell, we are an automation, electronics, pneumatics, control, HVAC company focused around really MRO solutions for manufacturing facilities. If you think about like how it's made and all the components and things that go into manufacturing, the parts, the pieces of automation, and really material handling systems, other systems, assembly lines, etc. We have the ability to fix those, repair those, or we have surplus components, or we're an authorized or a broker for new product. So we serve as kind of like the manufacturer's industry's best friend, and especially true when it comes to obsolescence and hard to find components. We're pretty good at holding a lot of inventory and advertising. One of our sites that we have is radwell.com. It's a site where we have 40 million plus listings on there. We carry over 2 million SKUs active in our distribution facilities. So for hard to find products, we're hard to beat. We generally have them in stock and can ship them the same day thanks to a lot of our automation. So just talking at a high level, again, we do distribution, we do repair, so high-tech repair, and then we also have surplus products, which we kind of term the user marketplace. And distribution is what you'd think of as a traditional, authorized distributor in many cases, and sometimes brokered. We're getting products for our customers, very focused on getting those products obviously quickly to the customers, as well as high-tech repair. So you have an older, or maybe you don't want to buy something new, or it's too expensive to refurbish or replace with a large CapEx spend, we can help in repairing those equipment, as well as we buy back surplus from end users, from manufacturers, and then we'll also sell those as well back. So we'll refurbish them. We'll put a Radwell warranty on those surplus products, where we guarantee those products for 2 years, and then we transact that as well. Radwell services a whole bunch of different industries. So as I described earlier, anything that you can think of in terms of manufacturing or whatever, we're very much in those industries and in that area. We have a very high emphasis on our customers, and what we do as a business is always customer driven. And because of that, we really want to focus on automation, and we wanted to use some of the automation that we fix and help our customers fix within our own facility. So because of all of that, we worked with Swisslog and we explored some options, and we'd like to kind of go through some of that as well and share our experiences with that. And I'll turn it over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Brian. So as I said earlier, we'll get into a few slides that describes who is Swisslog, since I don't think everybody on the call knows who Swisslog is. I think everyone will agree we're living in a fast moving, continually changing and dynamic world. And that is why it's important to understand the main drivers in our businesses. For material handling industry, it has been trending up over many, many, many years. But over the past several years, more companies than ever before have found the need to automate, and in some cases, to survive. Therefore, at Swisslog, we believe that the future in supply chain is robotics of varying types and needs to be data-driven. As you look at Swisslog, we're located in 25 different countries. This allows us to support customers almost anywhere in the world. Our employees are located regionally, not centrally, to support our customers. This includes personnel in sales, implementation, control, software, and all areas associated with post-go live support. We have 10 different technologies that we use in our systems, along with using third-party technologies. This allows us to develop the optimal solution for our customers. We have 6 product centers that are continuously improving our products and developing new products as required for meeting market trends. Our products allow us to design systems to handle pallets, cases, broken cases or eaches at various stages in the supply chain, which include, of course, supporting manufacturing warehousing and distribution centers for B2B, retailers, e-com, and then also micro fulfillment centers, which is the newest. As I stated earlier, Swisslog has regional staff supporting sales, implementation, and post go live support. During the sales phase, Swisslog gathers information to fully understand the customer's requirements and what issues need to be addressed or what is driving the need for change with automation. We then perform detailed analysis that drives the best technologies to use for the customer while optimizing processes and streamlining the material flow to provide the optimal business case for the customer. During the implementation phase, we have competent engineering, project managers that are responsible for delivering the installation on time and within budget, along with integration services to verify that the system is ready to be handed over to the customer. To name a few features of our post-go-live support, we offer a global service organization that tailors the maintenance and support programs for each customer to augment services that they're not able to provide themselves. And this can range from just routine maintenance all the way up to full-time on-site support if required. We have 24/7 support via our help desk to ensure that the system throughput and uptime are maximized. We offer modernizations and expansions for any changes caused by changing business requirements. And then we also have service technicians, local spare parts, depots, IT managed services, plus other capabilities for post-go-live support. As stated before, Swisslog has 10 products that are proven in the material handling, proven in the market, and used in our solutions that range from handling cases, pallets, totes, broken case articles, or eaches. So the pallet technology shown here would be the Power Store, Vectura, cranes, and ProMove conveyors. For light good technologies, which means handling either cases, totes, that would be the Cyclone Carrier, Tornado cranes, Carry Pick, Auto Store, and Quick Move conveyors. Other robotic technologies that are listed on here that we provide are Item Pick to pick individual units from various entities, and then AC Pack, which is for mixed case palletizing. To manage all these technologies and orchestrate the flow through our systems, we have a software package called Sync, which contains extensive functionality and features that not only manage the different technologies, but can also manage operations for part of or the entire distribution center or warehouse. Sync provides synchronized intelligence that connects automation, robotics, people, and processes all in for all of our solutions. You can kind of figure it to be the conductor of an orchestra. Sync is a modular platform with a single user interface that provides warehouse management, warehouse control, and material handling solutions for simple to high complex automated systems. The platform is continuously developed by our Sync Competency Center, and the releases are twice per year. As Brian stated earlier, Radwell was interested in exploring automation. They initially provided an RFI asking for solutions or technologies that could handle their existing totes or utilizing a tote specific to a technology. This opened the door to several technologies that Swisslog could offer, which are shown on this page. We have multiple technologies that compete in the same supply chain space, and we use the technology that is best for the particular application. The first technology deemed viable for Radwell was AutoStore. AutoStore requires a special tote, which is called a bin, that is designed specifically for the technology. AutoStore stores and retrieves the bins that are stacked on top of each other with minimal space between the stacks, providing very high density of the bins. AutoStore is best used when there is moderate to high inventory and can be designed for low to high performance requirements. Storing and handling Radwell's existing totes that they had at the time allowed us to offer two other technologies: our tornado cranes that are able to accommodate loads that are heavier or larger than what can be accommodated by some of the other technologies on this page. And then also the cyclone carrier, which is a shuttle-based technology, was also viable, but is more ideal for low inventory and high performance. Carry pick was not available, even though it's shown here, at the time that Radwell was considering the different technologies, but is also a viable solution and is best used when products are larger or the quantity of SKUs is low but with high performance, or the clear space is limited in the building. It can also be used for large quantity of SKUs or high performance. Since we have multiple technologies to use, we work with a customer so they fully understand the pros and cons of each technology, so the best technology is selected for their solution, as was done for Radwell.
And now just to jump into the Radwell side and trying to understand, okay, how do we choose now between all these options? You know, our primary focus is a solution that is driven to better our customers' experience with Radwell. So, you know, the nature of the surplus business is that we end up with a lot of inventory, a lot of items, a lot of things that don't move very fast, but take up a lot of space. And then obviously the competitiveness of distribution requires us to be as timely as possible, while also ensuring that we have things on the shelf and can pick and pull and ship those items quickly. And then obviously with the complexity of repair, we basically have another customer as well inside of our building that can be as demanding as manufacturing, or sometimes more demanding than manufacturing, in terms of having our warehouse deliver products to them. So with all that, and being in the manufacturing environment where, you know, a downtime is critical for a maintenance manager, they want to avoid that as much as possible. And when those do occur, those downtimes do occur, you know, our service needs to be spot on from Radwell's perspective. We need to be quick, fast, and efficient with getting that inventory out to them, because they're in an emergency type situation where, you know, something's stuck, something's not moving, they're not producing. You know, management is keen on ensuring that the downtime is reduced at any cost. So, you know, that's kind of our motivation behind our desire to do better for our customers, along with some common warehousing desires, which we have listed here. So how do we, you know, pick faster and have better service? How do we ensure redundancy? So in any kind of automation system, you know, redundancy is huge. You don't want anything going wrong with your own system that you're using to fulfill, and ensuring that it stays up and running to keep things moving in your own facility. Plus, for us, it's managing growth, and that doesn't just mean managing like volume growth. It also means managing growth of our inventory. So we have challenges on both those aspects, where we have pretty substantial growth over the last few years from both an inventory perspective and an overall sales perspective. So, you know, how do we manage that, and how do we utilize automation, and which solution really is right for managing that growth, as well as how do we prevent inventory loss? in traditional warehousing systems, there's not a lot of controls around the inventory. So how do we put controls around our inventory to ensure that when we do go to pick that one item, it's in the spot where we left it last, and hasn't moved, hasn't changed locations, etc. So all of this is really driving and helping us determine what our requirements were. And then now we can address some of the challenges even that we do have. So for us, space is a premium. It's probably true for most businesses. You always seem to use up all the space that you have pretty quickly and never have enough of it. So how do we optimize the space? Plus, with our initial looking at automation, we moved into a new facility, and it was an existing facility that had some mezzanines, some warehousing space, separated by walls, concrete walls, etc., different areas. And so how do you optimize a system within that warehousing space? And then how do you keep that picking efficiency high based off of potentially multiple warehousing areas or shelving areas, etc. As well as for Radwell, we went from an order picking where we would go run around the entire warehouse with one bin to finish the order, to zone picking, which was kind of more focused around picking in one area and then consolidating items, to ultimately, what does an auto store or an automation system look like? And again, a couple more of our challenges is just an integration to an ERP. During this time when we were looking, we were planning an ERP migration, going from Microsoft Dynamics to a P21. So what complications does that incur on a system? How do we integrate? How do we make sure that if we put stuff in here, we can get it out? And how do we connect that to orders? And then, how do we do that for millions of SKUs? Radwell has 2 million plus SKUs currently in our warehouses, and I believe over 1 million in our auto store system. So, how do we manage that, and how do we do that in a way that's efficient? And through this, we looked at obviously all the Tornado mini load, the Cyclone carrier, and others to try to understand it, and eventually ended up with the auto store. And the reasons why were the density of this system. We were able to get the density that we wanted, and be able to store space, store items in a space that most systems wouldn't have been able to store as much as we got. With scalability, that's a huge one as well. Because we're constantly growing, we need to be able to expand the system, and even continue to grow workstations, grow the storage space, etc. Flexibility for this, we'll see here in a couple slides why flexibility is important. I won't get too much into that one. Energy efficiency, obviously, is we try to be as green as possible too. An auto store, the robots are kind of like small vacuum cleaners. They don't use much power. And then reliability. For us, we have seen basically 99% plus uptime of the system. And even when we do have an occurrence where a robot goes down for normal operating business reasons, the system's back up and running within minutes. We can take that robot off. We can basically put it into a service area of the grid, and then let the rest of the system continue running and kind of handle it quickly. And from our aspect too, being that we are in automation, for us it's easy to look at these robots and put them back onto the grid. But we've been able to take regular warehouse representatives and train them on the system to help them keep it up and running for us. So for us, the auto store system has provided us a large amount of reliability through it. And so we ended up with what you see in this design for our first auto store in Willingboro, New Jersey. We have 34 robots, 4 pick stations, so 4 stations where we primarily conduct picking, and 5 induction stations, so 5 put away locations with almost 50,000 bins. And what you can see in this, and what we'll watch in a second on a video that we'll share with you guys, is that this system, the main storage area of it that you see in the back portion of the video is, or the back portion of the image, is on the ground floor, whereas the picking occurs actually on a mezzanine, which is separated from the main storage grid And you have a through pass actually underneath that picking area that forklifts, people, etc., can walk through. So we used a little bit of our building design and the flexibility and creativeness that you can do with an auto store to really make it work for us in the facility. And so with this video, you'll get a little bit more of an in-depth and in-motion view of what the system looks like.
Radwell International is a company that focuses on the sustainability of industrial manufacturing equipment. We offer repair services on electronics and electromechanical products. The majority of our inventory is at this location, and so we support all 9 of our locations with the inventory from here. Radwell International is a very family-focused business. We consider all of our employees to be members of our extended family. We demand high productivity from everybody that works from us, but we try to make it still as fun as possible.
Extremely proud to work for a company where we take so much pride in really the history of the company and where it was founded, who it was founded by, and then how it's kind of progressed over the years into what it is.
We are a very high-tech company, so a great majority of our employees are technicians and engineers.
We're constantly striving for new and better ways to do everything so that we can become faster and bigger.
From our perspective, it's how fast we can pick it, how fast we can get it to the boxers. Opportunities come up all the time. The product just keeps flowing in, truckload after truckload every day. Our current inventory is about 12 million SKUs. Our database contains about 24 million SKUs. That's a business model that leads to never having enough space. Wanted to put in an automated system for the inventory and wanted to find out what would be best for us. So when we were looking at systems that would allow us to utilize the most storage per space, the auto store for this particular building lended itself quite well. The other alternatives for storage really just couldn't store as much. We were about 30% more storage in the same square footage as the other solutions. The fact that the system is utilizing 34 robots in our particular case, and that the robots are all independently, controlled units. If one goes down, we're not down. So there are advantages in the auto store in terms of what has to be maintained. You can easily increase the size of the aluminum grid without actually having to turn the system off. So you could be building more infrastructure, and then when it's complete, you can then fill it with more inventory without losing really any time at all in terms of productivity time.
What we do at Radwell International, it's not easy for somebody to learn. You can't just jump in and instantly know everything and understand the processes and understand the details that we need in order to function at a very high level. Swisslog and their personnel were able to jump right in and understand at a very high level what our needs were, and then provide an automated system and software to go with it in order to work and perform at the levels that we anticipate and expected from the very beginning. It's been just amazing to be able to work with a system from the vice president all the way down to our site manager, to the technicians, the engineers, the support personnel. Everything has been just a pleasure to work with everybody. Traditionally, we've been able to do about 120 bin visits in an 8-hour period on average in our warehouse. The Swisslog auto store system is capable of doing 120 bin visits per station per hour.
Everybody is very impressed by it. It's the highlight of every tour we ever do, and it leaves a fantastic impression on the customers when they leave. They're more likely to want to do business with Radwell, seeing that Radwell is willing to invest in the future in this kind of way, shows that we're willing to invest in whatever's needed to support them.
Yeah, and so that's our auto store Willingboro facility, and the objectives that we set out to hit, some of the challenges that I expressed earlier, they were all more or less achieved through that system, and we improved our inventory management. In that video, a couple years old now in terms of that, but we had 12 million SKUs at that point in time. Now we have 40 million, and AutoStore is still running great. We've shortened our fulfillment times. We were able to achieve that maximum storage capacity based off of other competing technologies, and we were able to increase our pick performance by close to 800%. And those numbers are still accurate today. We're still picking upwards of 100, 120 picks per hour per station, whereas previously one person doing zone picking in our facility was able to do 120 picks in a single day. The 120 picks from the AutoStore perspective in an hour is actually slow. So I will note that, but that's primarily due to how we store items, not due to the capacity of the system. Technically, our system could pick faster if our humans were able to actually find the items quicker in the bins. And that's just a business decision that we had to make on our side. But the results speak for itself. We were able to put this in place actually prior to our ERP migration of this system. And throughout the ERP migration, this system actually made it easier for us to transition because we made that connection early, and we're able to put products in prior to fully migrating over.
Based on the success of the first system and the benefits of AutoStore, Radwell and Swisslog have implemented another AutoStore system in Radwell's Arlington facility. Along with, we're currently implementing a system in Radwell's Glendale facility that will be going live in several months. Radwell has the largest quantity of SKUs, as you can kind of tell, with 1 million in the current system in one facility than any other AutoStore in the world, which is a testimony that our software was able to accommodate that quantity of SKUs. It was actually tested to accommodate 8 million SKUs. So if Radwell decides to put 8 million SKUs in there, we're guaranteed that it can handle it. If they want to do maybe 40 million, they may have to do some more testing on that, but I'm confident that it could handle it.
Yeah, and with those 3 sites now that we'll have with our AutoStore, we've really seen since we've ramped out or since we've gone live with each system, we've really seen an impact to the overall business as well. The automated picks per hour in our Texas facility is over 250 at this point, and that's our second AutoStore site. And our New Jersey site is upwards in the 500, 600 range. We have 52 robots and more coming. We have great control over our inventory and what's happening with it, and we're really able to scale and grow and service the needs of our customers. With this system, we've been able to offer basically same-day shipping on anything within that system. And most of the time, even though we have a cutoff, we can get stuff out even that same day without and going past that cutoff time period because of the system. It's really the other areas of the business and the other warehousing that we have inside for larger items where we don't hit it. But the AutoStore continually outperforms and really has exceeded our expectations, even from an ROI standpoint initially. So we've been just really thrilled by the solution and glad that we worked through this and looked at everything that we did look at in order to come to this conclusion.
All right, well, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. We're well ahead of schedule here. We're only about 34 minutes into the session. So we have time for questions here from the audience. And we've got a few questions here that we'd like to reach out and get some answers on. I think it's important, when you talk about the number of SKUs that you have in the system in the millions and the number of bins, it's a presumption that you have multiple SKUs per bin. And is that part of what's, I guess, first of all, is that the case? And then secondly, if that's the case, is that part of what's impacting the throughput range below what the system could potentially do? I
Yes.
guess that would be something for you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I could definitely handle that one. Yeah, so yeah, how I like to describe how we store inventory is if you think about, we're from the Northeast, so big Eagles fans. We have a lot of Eagles fans in the building. And of course, we have some Giants fans being in New Jersey and the occasional Cowboys fans. So how I like to explain what we do and how we store our inventory is in a typical distributor, you would store your Eagles hats separate from your Giants hats, separate from your Cowboys hats. In our system, just because of how we receive products, we don't really know what's coming in on a day-to-day basis in the surplus world. Sometimes we're tearing down facilities and we're getting a whole bunch of different components. We store all those hats together in the same bin. So, we have Eagles, Giants, and Cowboys all in the same bin, coexisting, thankfully, but coexisting in that bin together. And that's what takes a little bit of extra time. We do present to our users a picture of the unit, and we do have each item inside a bin barcoded so that they can confirm what they're picking. So we don't see a lot of picking issues. It's just the time. It's a little bit slower than immediately knowing that you just have to pick something up and scan it and move it on to the next step of the process. We generally have somewhere between 30 and I would say 80 SKUs per bin. So it can get a little bit extreme, but again, we're looking to fill those bins as much as possible, as opposed to really focusing on the speed. We get the speed through the automation. We don't really need it in terms of that.
Okay. And so are those bins actually subdivided in some cases, or are they all just an open bin where the parts are stored, together?
Yep, so they're completely open. We did not subdivide any of our bins. However, we are looking at, in our new Arizona facility, actually doing a little bit more intelligent and I'll call it more traditional separation with dividers in the bins. So we're working out a plan for that within our own internal systems, etc. So the cool part about that is that we'll be able to do both within the auto store is our intention. We'll be able to store efficiently where we need bulk items, as well as just leave it open and not have any dividers in the bin. So kind of the flexibility of the system and how you use it ultimately decides what you want to do with that.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Brian. And maybe Paul, this is a question for you. How is the fire protection handled in the system, or is it in fact required? What can you tell us about that?
So fire protection requires to meet the classification of AutoStore, which is solid piled storage of uncartoned and unexpanded plastic. It does not require fire sprinkler heads inside of the unit. It just needs them to be on the ceiling, and the density is then controlled or determined by this classification. And then if there's other requirements based on the insurance company, then that's negotiated between the customer and their underwriter.
So the key is to get those requirements out front and understand exactly what the local requirements are then, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And here's a question from the audience. First of all, great presentation is the introductory comment, so I would concur with that. But then the question is, what is the mean order lines per man hour that was attained?
Yeah, so I'll answer that one. Obviously our peak was 135 was our peak that we got. We have achieved during certain days about 120 picks per hour pretty consistently, but overall we see somewhere currently in like the 80 to 85 range for mean currently. And that's working on like I believe it's about a 14-hour schedule right now, because we pick from about 6 a.m. to about 7 p.m. generally. So yeah, each of our stations are actually tracked by hour as to how much they produce, and generally on our picking ports, we're getting in that 80 to 85 range.
Okay, thank you. So, excuse me, as we look at this, can you share with us, obviously, since you've gone from 1 to 2 to now a third location with the system. What lessons have you learned from each one of those that you'd like to share with the audience? So again, Brian, probably best for you.
Yeah, so each one, I guess, has kind of been a little bit different. In New Jersey, kind of the lesson that we learned there is really that the auto store is able to be put in a pretty dynamic environment in terms of space and layout. With our main portion of our cube being on the ground floor and then our picking being on the second floor, we really learned that the system is very flexible at that. And the awesome part about it for us was that we were able to connect and utilize that mezzanine, which moving into that building, we really didn't know what to do with it. But what we did end up doing with it is putting our entire picking area up there. We have conveyors up there that send product down to our production floor, as well as we have our entire shipping system up there that's associated with the auto store. So by the time the box leaves on another conveyor down to be put onto a truck, everything's been done with it. We've pretty much as close to automated and efficientized that entire part of the process upstairs. Now, our Texas facility, what we really learned at that Texas facility is how to optimize the efficiency of the auto store by putting in basically like a cantilevered overhang over top of our picking area to help with robot charging as well as space optimization. The auto store, the robots face one direction. And so in order to pick from certain areas or put away to certain areas of the system, so if you're up against a wall or a building column, etc., you have to have robots that face two directions in order to service those spots. Now, what that means is if you have a traditional vertical front of your picking, then you only have one of those facing robots servicing your picking or put away ports. Now, what we figured is and found out is that you could put a cantilever over top of that with a mezzanine and basically get full use of all your robots at all your ports. And the cool part about that too is it also enabled us to lengthen our service mezzanine as well, and to allow us to bring people up onto that platform to really view the entire auto store system and get like a really bird's eye view of how it works. And we enjoy doing that because we like showing off our technology and our processes to our customers, to vendors, etc. And that was optimal for there. In Arizona, much of the same that we learned in Texas, but also in a much bigger system, and figuring out how we can put different ports closer together, configure things a little bit differently to get a little bit more optimum. And then, what I discussed earlier with the SKU storage, we're learning a little bit more about how flexible Swisslog, the system, and their sync software, along with our software, is in order to try to push the bounds of efficiencies even further. So we're really excited for that to go live and to kind of explore being and becoming more optimal with our SKU storage and how it's handled. And why I want to point that out and just kind of talk about that for a second too is, back to the question earlier about the mean pick rate. Right now we're getting that 80, I'll call it 80 to 120 kind of capped. And that's due to about 25 to 30 second on average go find it time, I'll call it. So basically the time from when the bin's presented in front of us to the user picker finding that product, scanning it, and transacting with the computer system, that's kind of abnormal compared to most systems. Most people are probably in like the 4 to 8 second range. So because we're 5 times more than that, it really slows down their ability to be efficient with picks. So in our Arizona, we've really tried to highlight that as a potential avenue for increasing our efficiencies and obviously increasing our throughput through the system. So yeah, those are the 3 for each of the locations so far.
Okay, well, that's very good. So, and it's like anything else, it's not just a cookie cutter response that's gone into each one of the facilities, but each one is getting a little bit better and accommodating as the point was made earlier, the flexibility around what's the existing infrastructure in the building. You know, being able to use a mezzanine that otherwise you'd say either is lost space or maybe needs to be torn down. You're utilizing that as part of the system because of the flexibility. So that's good. So Paul, I guess a question for you here then. So, you know, these are all good lessons learned for Radwell. I can only imagine that that's a synergy that then you're able to bring to other customers as, you know, they face similar challenges. And I'm assuming that's part of what you do is part of the services that you do provide. Am I correct there?
Exactly. Each system, of course, stands by itself, and we look at it independently to what needs are required of the different technologies and then design it according to the requirements.
Okay. And, you know, we talked about the different solutions that are available out there. And I think Carry Pick was the one that's more for lower ceilings potentially. What would be the ideal, if you had one, ceiling height for a auto store system, would you say?
So the best height is probably around 23, 24 feet. However, it can be designed for lower ceiling heights. It's a matter of how low it becomes less efficient if you design it to something that's only 8 feet tall versus something that's 24. But it's a lot of times we install them in facilities that are 40 feet clear, and then the customer can make a decision whether they want to put AutoStore on a mezzanine if they are interested in maximizing the cube of the facility, or they can potentially put them underneath a mezzanine. And we've done both.
Okay, all right. Dave, I'll turn this over to you for a few more questions, if you would, please.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lou. Hey, we've got a couple of audience questions here, guys, that we need to kind of take a look at. Did you have to rework your packing or replenishment or any other process to keep up with higher productivity of picking to avoid bottlenecks elsewhere?
Yes, we absolutely did. Because of the speed and the ability of the AutoStore system, we did absolutely have to rework that back end shipping system. We actually, to be honest, we actually started with that, and I started on a project to automate our shipping, and then AutoStore kind of came alongside and went along with it. So what we ended up doing there, and quick plug for our YouTube site, we have a video tour of our entire facility if you guys like to see it, that kind of goes through these areas as well. I'll try to explain it the best I can, but a video is probably way better than my highlights. But yeah, we put in place a robotic system to actually create the cartons and deliver them to our packagers. And we took away tape from our packagers, and basically that packaging system, that box building system, builds the box with the tape already on the bottom of the box. Added a conveyor to then, once the packager is done with that, put it on that conveyor, and then we tape the bottom, and then we applied a print and apply system. So basically a shipping dimensionalized and weight-based freight finder, more or less, that prints and applies the shipping label directly onto the boxes. So we did all of that on the back end of picking from the AutoStore in order to try to keep up with the volume. And that has, honestly, we got pretty close. A lot of our, everything in the beginning is kind of a guess in terms of volume levels and things like that. And we actually send work sometimes upstairs to that mezzanine because our shipping is still a little bit faster on our second floor mezzanine shipping off of AutoStore than it is for our big stuff that we have downstairs below that mezzanine. So yes, we did do that to avoid bottlenecks and ensure that we keep a smooth process through that.
Gotcha. Now, we did look at your layout in the presentation, and there was a number of different pieces of automation. I noticed the crane system, the shuttle system, and the AutoStore. Were there any additional picking done out of the other systems, the crane or the shuttle system, or was that just an automated reserve?
Yeah, so those systems those are just examples in that drawing as to what Swisslog can do. Our only automation is that AutoStore system.
Gotcha.
We currently do traditional pallet racking for some of our larger items, and what we've done to try to make that more efficient too, as an aside, is we've actually put in fork trucks that are RFID guided and wire guided as well. So, our pickers more or less can go into the aisle and just drive, and the machine actually drives directly to the location of that bin, pallet, etc. We do so low volume in that area that we really didn't have a reason to automate that, unless it was going to be to save space. And we didn't really come up with something that was affordable in terms of space saving for that yet.
Gotcha. All right, thanks for that. Let's go back to the audience questions. This one again is for Brian. What specific inventory management issues did this system address, and how has inventory accuracy improved?
Yeah, so one of the things that it did address is a lot of our inventory, because we do surplus as well as new, we have some inventory that move very quickly, and those are the new items, and they're generally kept in bins that are cleaner, etc. And they were kept separate prior to. With the AutoStore, we're able to put them together, and with surplus though, the items would sit in bins for potentially a longer amount of time. We had pickers who were pulling bins off of shelves, pulling pallets off of shelves, and doing the picking there. So we didn't change the fact that there was multiple SKUs in a bin, and we didn't change that from before to with AutoStore. And what would happen is a lot of time pickers would start using shelves and using other areas while they're looking for a product inside that bin. They would forget that they put something on that shelf, on a bin, whatever, and then to find the item that they need and close that bin, put it on the shelf, and walk away. So what that would cause is when our managers were walking through the warehouse, they would find items outside of bins. Now, it doesn't happen all the time. It wasn't a huge occurrence, but they wouldn't know where this item came from. We'd have to try to figure it out, backtrack it back to that bin. With the AutoStore, very clean picking area, inventory control around that, reporting, as well as software around what's in the bin, traditional cycle counting processes as well that are attached to it, really keep a much tighter control over the inventory and kind of any movement of that inventory within the system that is not for a pick or is not for a purpose-driven inventory move. So, our amount of effort to find those items and to manage those issues really decreased with the AutoStore, as well as with AutoStore we now have trackability over who touched that bin, how long did they look at that bin for, what items did they take out of that, etc. So if there are any issues, let's say somebody does take an item out of a bin and doesn't record that or wasn't purposeful, etc., we could go back through, see exactly who touched that bin, see exactly where that item came from, and when it transacted with a port, and what user was there, and basically control the inventory much better from there. So that has, I hope that answers the question, but that has allowed us to really tighten the strains on kind of inventory loss, almost to basically zero at this point with that system.
Gotcha. One quick follow-up question though. Did you put in a port that was dedicated to inventory challenges like cycle counting, or were you using induction or decant ports to do that on kind of off times for induction?
Yeah, so the great part about the two different ports that we put in, one was an induction port and one was a picking port, is that you can really use them for both. We've actually used our induction ports for picking occasionally. I don't recommend it because it is slower, but we have done it on occasion. But we put in induction ports, and we kind of set aside one or two of those induction ports each day to do cycle counting and to do inventory checks on the system. So I would say, yes, we did kind of consider that up front and ensure that we had something to do that. We're also on the side, and not to belabor that question, but we are putting in another software feature that we customized with Swisslog to do a different version of cycle counting, something we call compaction or consolidation. And what that enables us to do is to take basically 2 half full bins and consolidate them into one completely full bin by also doing a cycle count in it. So basically we take those bins that are partially filled from one port and cycle count them over into a brand new empty bin and return that now cycle counted bin back to the system. So again, one of the the nice parts, we kind of set up these stations to be able to do both that process as well as regular induction as well as other things. So kind of have flexibility as well as customization there.
So that process, was that done at the port, or did you have to take the 2 totes to a separate workstation to do the consolidation and then take it back for induction?
Yep, so we are doing that at the ports. You never have to remove the bins from the system at any point.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty awesome.
Okay. This is kind of for both of you. I know there's a couple of different types of ports that AutoStore offers, depending on kind of the rates that you want to get. Can you maybe touch on, Paul, maybe start with an overview of the port types, but then let's talk specifically about what you used in the Radwell implementations.
So at the time, they didn't have as many ports available as they do today from AutoStore. So at the time, they had the conveyor port, which basically moves the port forward and back all in a straight line to get the port to the operator and then back into the system. And then they have what they call a carousel port, which horizontally moves 3 bins around in a circle, and they can go either clockwise or counterclockwise to get the bins from storage, which the robots are delivering, to the operator interface point. And that those 2 were available at the time. They have since come out with additional ports, a relay port, which is very complex and I won't be able to describe it properly, but it's multiple different points of dropping bins down onto conveyors that allow more bins to be queued up in front of the operator to get a faster response time and exchange time for the operator. And then they came out with the fusion port here recently, which is a side-by-side where ports are bins are coming out either on left side or right side of each other. So there's additional ports. Typically, we would use a conveyor port for induction because induction takes more time and is the least expensive of all the different ports. So because of the expense and the slowness needed, conveyor ports are typically provided for induction. And then the carousel port was used because of the faster exchange time that it offers. And that was used then for the picking, that if Radwell does get into a fast picking cycle, the exchange time is much quicker and can accommodate a faster turnaround. So these other ports that they do have, which there's more ports available than what I described, but we look at each application to figure out what's the turnaround time. Is the operator picking only 5 seconds, or do they have picking time of 1 minute to 2 minutes or whatever the case may be? That then drives which port is best suited from AutoStore to include in the system. We also customize for some customers workstations that utilize maybe some of the components from AutoStore in a little bit different configuration that maybe AutoStore doesn't want to provide, but the customer is demanding or requesting from us. So we do also customize workstations when needed.
Gotcha. Any other thoughts there, Brian? Anything else you want to add?
No, for us, the conveyor port and the induction port were kind of the best options based off of our needs.
Gotcha. Okay. We haven't talked at all at all about floor flatness, but that certainly is kind of a key consideration for auto store, since the totes must sit on the ground. And your first facility was an existing building, is that correct, Brian?
Yep.
So how intrusive was the grinding process to try and get the floor ready for installing auto store?
Yeah, in each of our sites, we have had to do a little bit of floor work, but it's not been that difficult and not been that tough to figure out and to resolve. The nice part is that in the Willingboro site, we got everything all at once and had to figure out a whole bunch of different solutions because of the mezzanine and because of the existing floor. So we learned a lot in that first building. But what our approach was, and I think generally there's really two options that you have, is to either float a new floor on top of your existing floor, and that means just like basically putting an inch or two of concrete across the area, or actually just shaving down the high areas of the concrete through grinding. The grinding is a little bit of a dirty process, but generally not too hard, not too difficult. And most warehouse floors are already pretty flat. There is some potato chipping that does occur over time with warehouse floors, but that's kind of normal and they do kind of settle out. So for us, that was basically a day's worth of work to grind that down, and it wasn't much longer than that. And we're talking about in about a 12 to 14,000 square foot area. Then our mezzanine, what we ended up doing, because it was smaller and because being a mezzanine, we had a little bit more of a difference in it, concrete mezzanine. We put just a thin layer of leveling on the existing low spots and basically made that work for that mezzanine. In Texas, we actually floated an entire floor there. And, that was, again, just based off of in Texas, the floors there are older building too. Floors there are less stable, a little bit more. It was a building that was a little bit older than even the Willingboro building. And so for us, it just made sense to do that. And then in Arizona, we did do newer building, but we did do a little grinding just because there was some imperfections in the floor that we wanted to get squared off before we do it. So, with all that though, it is something to consider. It is something to think about, but it's really not a lot of work. It's not very expensive either. There's a lot of contractors, etc., that are experienced in those kind of things. And if more or less, if you do your research and ask the right questions and tell them what to do, it's pretty easy to walk through.
Gotcha. Okay. You're obviously a pro with this, having gone through this several times. Thinking back to your first install of AutoStore to kind of your latest install of AutoStore, what are kind of some of the lessons learned from the original project that you've kind of incorporated in the subsequent projects?
Yeah, great question. So some of the things that we have learned obviously are, the differences between the picking and the induction ports and kind of where you do advantages there. The cantilevered overhang over top of the picking ports for us is obviously a big winner because it enables us to get full utilizations out of all the robots in their various directions. Having somebody that's on like a maintenance schedule of some kind, you can either use Swisslog or we use Swisslog for our first couple years, but then we took a lot of that in-house. But what I mean by that too is just having somebody basically wipe down the wheels, check the battery, check the cables, basically just do inspections of the robot on almost like a quarterly basis. That's very important. Doesn't really take much time, honestly, to do any of that, but it really does help the robots stay on the grid for as long as possible. For us, the batteries too have been a an awesome thing for us because they lasted, I think, 7 years. We didn't have to replace our batteries for 7 years. I know that's not probably normal depending on how heavy you run the system. But we made sure that we dedicated a good 4 hours every night for a deep cycle charge, and I think that's very important for these robots, and kept them running that way. As to where you put it in the facility, I would say the best place to put it is obviously as close to shipping as possible if you have the space to do that, because this is a great system for getting things out the door fast, and very flexible in that aspect. But you also want to put it in a place where you have extra room to grow, because you don't want to put it in a corner or box it in too much. I mean, you can, there's nothing wrong with that. You can cut holes through walls. You can add an addition onto a building and cut channels through that and make it work. There's nothing wrong with that. But put it in a good spot in your building. Make sure that your picking areas and your induction areas are either opposite of each other or all on the same wall. That helps again with robots and efficiencies. And then the last one is really figure out how to use the flexibility of the system to your advantage and the redundancy of it. Its uptime is pretty incredible. And one of the great parts about it for us, we deal with after hours orders and after hour rushes. So what that means is that 2 a.m. somebody calls us and say, hey, I really need this part. We say yes to them. Of course, we have to keep our customers happy and keep manufacturing up and running. But what that means in the early days for us was that a sales rep sometimes had to come in and run the auto store, which to them initially was really concerning. But after we showed them how easy it was to put in an order in our system and then prioritize that with the auto store to get it picked, they ended up loving the system because of that, because literally they could enter their order from home on their laptop and then come into the system, turn on their port for picking, and literally the first bin, we set it up so that the first bin that comes to them is for their order. They transact it, they put it in a shipping box, they hand it to the overnight freight courier that we had, and then they go home. Instead of what they had to do before, a lot of times was try to figure out where the item was in the warehouse, figure out if they could even get there, and so point is utilize the flexibility of the system. I think it's there for a reason, and I think it's one of the stronger automation solutions in the market currently because of that flexibility.
Perfect. Hey, we haven't talked a lot about timing, but over the past several years, we've heard some pretty horrific stories about long lead times for automation. What can people expect as a typical timeline from contract to implementation, maybe based on small, medium, large type system or some other type of factor?
Yeah, you're right, David, that during the height of COVID and due to supply chain challenges, the lead times were substantially longer prior to COVID. And since, of course, things are getting back to normal, the timelines are almost at the same level they were pre-COVID. So typically for a smaller system, depending upon, of course, many different factors, you can get a system maybe in 10 to 12 months from the time that you order to the time that it's handed over to the customer for them to start using it. For larger systems, just because of the sheer nature of installation time, that can grow into 18 months. And then if the customer has some different processes and a lot of changes to the software, of course, times can vary based on those different factors. If, like I said, if the customer has processes that they have to follow that extend the time, when is the building available, all those have factors in the timelines. But typically I would say anywhere from 10 to 18 months with today's lead times.
And I'll just make a quick comment on that too, just to talk about my experience with Swisslog and those timelines. What Paul said is absolutely accurate. We've also been able to tighten some of the timeframes, just depending on working with Swisslog, but depending on just the space that you have. So, obviously, software takes a certain amount of time. The installation takes a certain amount of time. And then you have to do bin induction, which takes a certain amount of time as well. And the bins they're stackable, they're not nesting. So if you do have the space and the ability to store a larger amount of bins prior to the bin induction phase, that is an area where we've been able to see a few days to a week of a reduction in the lead time for it. But yeah, the lead times are, as Paul discussed, but Swisslog is great to work with in order to figure out, okay, well, maybe I can cut a couple days and shave a couple weeks here and there throughout the process. But obviously, I recommend going through the process as they outline and working with them as tightly as possible for that, because it is extremely important to have good installers on any kind of automation system, regardless of what it is. It definitely helps with the longevity and the success of the system.
Gotcha. So you mentioned in your example about the order in the middle of the night from the sales rep, but in general, this is probably a pretty radical, at least for the first facility, this was probably a pretty radical change from your operation in the past. What did you go through, or how did you sell this solution and get your team to embrace it as kind of the wave of the future?
Great question. Yeah, that's naturally with any kind of automation these days, it sometimes gets a negative connotation around it. But I don't think that we ever really had that at Radwell. And I think that's due to the fact that we deal with automation day to day. So we kind of understand the benefits of it. And, we really touted the fact that this system is taking somebody who had, really honestly a tough job running up and down warehouses, up and down ladders, pulling products here and there, doing a lot of things like that. It really made their ability to work and their enjoyment of work a lot easier. So, we pushed that, and throughout our growth past our auto store, we've been able to transition a lot of people from their roles as pickers or inventory consolidators or whatever warehouse functions that we were doing before that were kind of less sophisticated. We've changed their job roles or improved their abilities, taught them, etc., to be people who are either managers or maintenance of our auto store system. We have one gentleman that's become really an expert in these robots and how they work, as well as we moved them to other areas of the business or other more important functions that were more critical than kind of moving things from left to right. So I think that has been a little bit easier for us than I feel like it can be for others, but that's just because of what we do, how we do it, and kind of how we approached it. But yeah, it was very positive overall. We never reduced headcount because of this system, which we absolutely could have. But our growth kind of, because of all the abilities, because of all what we were able to do with that system, we still needed those people. It required us to keep them around, and I think that's awesome from an employee perspective.
So is that a bit of retraining or creating new roles for the team? How did you handle that with the changing environment with your people?
Great follow-up. Yeah, and Swisslog actually, through the process, they actually did some trainings as well on the system, the robots, the maintenance, preventative maintenance, handling downtime issues or any kind of stoppages in the system, as well as teaching them about the software that they applied and how to manage that software. So we did that alongside of Swisslog through the installation of this. But then, yeah, we did retraining. We moved people from either the warehouse into production, into a higher level, higher capacity job, etc., and kind of realigned. And past that too, we were really able to focus on other inventory principles that we were leaving aside before like good cycle counting principles and other things for the rest of our warehouse, as opposed to having them being full-time picking and kind of neglecting other areas that we could have more attention to.
Perfect. Thanks for that. So what's next, Paul? What, AutoStore's been around for a while. It's pretty proven technology these days, but you mentioned some of the things that have changed over time. What's new and exciting? What's coming up for AutoStore that's going to keep it relevant in this changing world?
So they keep coming out with new features that can be incorporated into the solution. Like I said, the most recent workstation that they released this year was a Fusion port, and they have multiple different versions of it that are there to increase the picking efficiency at the workstation, that only increases the range of how to apply AutoStore if you have an extremely high throughput system. They're coming out with technologies and components that accommodate that. So like I said, we typically have a range of where products or technologies are best suited in, and AutoStore is continually increasing that range of where the best fit is for the technology. So they've come out with different software that helps with the routing of each of the robots to streamline that allows you to get more out of your system. So if you had the older version of software, which was called Planner, and you upgraded to what's called router software, you can get more throughput with the same robots if you did that. Along, if you wanted to change or add the stations, which is easy to change or add stations to AutoStore, which is fantastic. So if you wanted to try a new workstation to get more throughput out of it with the new software and the different components, you can do that.
Gotcha.
Okay, well, we're down to about the last 10 to 15 minutes here, and we don't need to take that entire time frame, but I do want to make one or two additional questions here, maybe. We're talking about the balance of systems and people in automation. So how is the system controlled within the facility there? I'm assuming it is the sync software that's potentially interfacing with either an ERP or WMS. Can you comment on that, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have the sync software that works more or less with the robot controller from the Swisslog side, and I won't get into too much of that. I'll let Paul if he wants to explain the details of that. But then the sync software communicates with our ERP system, and we used P21 by Epicor for that. So anytime that we send product to the AutoStore or ask to pick product or pull product from the AutoStore, it's a request that's working through our P21 system. And those requests for us are kind of batched in about a 15 to 30 minute window. So all our orders are batched, and from the time where our sales rep enters it to the time it gets to the AutoStore, at worst, it's about 30 minutes. But that enables the system to be able to be most productive for that. And obviously, that's kind of what we worked with and how we worked through that. Yeah.
All right, very good.
So I can add to that. So there's three levels, as Brian said. There's an AutoStore control system that manages the robots and where the bins are stored. They have no knowledge within their control system of inventory. They just keep track of where the bins are, where the robots are, the paths, and then managing the ports to get the bins to and from the operator. The sync software is the brains of the AutoStore, where we're managing the inventory, and then we receive orders and confirm completion to P21. So really, the AutoStore sync is managing the whole AutoStore system. It's a black box to Profit 21, and then we just respond back and forth as to what's been picked and what's been completed.
Okay, thank you very much. So we certainly appreciate everyone's time today. You know, I guess we look at this and say, why would Sedlak as a consultant present sessions like this? And it's obviously to make sure that everyone is informed of the available options that are out there for them to improve their operations. And kind of as we discovered in today's session, you know, the picking was the primary driver on this particular project, but as we found out, obviously that impacted other areas in the facility, such as the packing area. And this is where Sedlak can help kind of bring that entire solution set to bear. We're pleased to partner with Swisslog and you know, their solution set here and work with them on many opportunities. In addition to that, we want to certainly thank you know, you in particular, Brian, for giving us all the insights that you did to your operation there. I think the lessons learned are always probably the most important from these types of sessions. I'll remind all the audience members that, first of all, we appreciate your time today. In addition to that, the session is recorded. If you want to share that with others, please feel free to do so. If you've registered, you are also registered for our third event, which is coming up in September. You will get some reminders about that. But if you've enjoyed this session and would like others to attend, please encourage them to join as well. And they can view that as well as the first session. Our last session in September will basically feature two providers, and that is BrightPick. BrightPick is a new option for picking automated system. Their first US installation was at NetRush, and we're going to learn about how they differentiate themselves in terms of the marketplace and the success that NetRush has had with them. And then they will share that session with TZA, who is a well-respected labor management system provider. And they'll be presenting with Bob's Discount Furniture. You know, and while, you know, I said this the first session, I'll say it again here. While, you know, it seems that labor management is lower on people's responses to the questionnaire, the reality is that today's labor management systems are not the ones of 10 or 15 years ago. These are very easily implemented with paybacks typically in the 3 to 9 month time frame, and are certainly something that should be considered as a possibility in terms of gaining that balance again between the people, processes, and automation. With that, again, I'll thank you know, certainly Dave, Brian, and Paul for their time, and most importantly, you for attending in the audience there. And we wish you a great rest of your day and the rest of your week. Thank you very much for attending. Goodbye now.